Okay, David and Goliath, the story. It's actually a reference to the Trinity as well. The first line of Genesis, God's Spirit hovered above the water, is also a reference to the Trinity, but they're quite subtle references. David, he was the underdog, wasn't he? His father didn't even take him to meet Samuel, but Samuel did request him, and of course he was chosen and he was anointed. The anointing, I'll get back to that later on in the story. Saul was he was a king at that time, wasn't he? And he actually made war with the Israelites. And the story of David and Goliath, it's kind of like really dramatic. It's like they stood on each side of two mountains with a valley in between them. And not only that, they brought their champion Goliath. And my sort of intro to the giants, they do exist, but I don't think that they're, you can't really see them. I think they're quite hidden. And I think that somehow the Philistines had made a pact with Goliath and managed to kind of get him to be a warrior for them. I think it would have been quite an unusual thing. So and the thing is, 1 Samuel 17:5-7 describes this fearsome giant who they had got, and it's a really sort of visual kind of impression of him, and he sets this sort of incredible challenge to Israel, and it says in the book of Samuel, all the men were afraid. Not just a couple of them, but literally the whole army was afraid of this giant, because you've got this sort of really vivid description of the 1 Samuel 17:5-7. It describes the amount of armour that he had on him, and it was really, really heavy. And of course, that he travelled in it, and it's quite. This imagery is, if you read it, it's really interesting.
Larger than that man, who's maybe around 6 feet tall. The large gravestone was allegedly cut into multiple.
So all the men, they were absolutely terrified. But David, he was without fear before him, and I think the David and Goliath story ultimately is a battle between good and evil, which we all have to go through at some stage of our lives or another. And there's the verse 42, Samuel, see Goliath curse David by his gods. It must have been very fearsome. And also, Deuteronomy 32:17 talks about these gods that he's accusing them of, is that, they sacrificed unto the devils, not to God, to gods whom they did not know. So, that's what he meant when he said that. 1 Corinthians 10:19-20 also says about sacrifices to gods, in which they offer to demons, not God. And then Samuel 17:44-45 is David's response, that he comes in the name of the Lord of hosts, whom you have defiled. And so, sort of long story short of the David and Goliath is that David wasn't fighting in the flesh. He was fighting through the Spirit. And he was fighting with sort of God's power within him, and he didn't even have a sword, which kind of proves that. And also he was given this sort of fearless spirit at his anointing. And as I said, there's no sword with David. He just had the sling, and if you read the book of Samuel, it's like you know, where all the men are just absolutely terrified, he ran at Goliath, and, well, we all know the outcome of that. So, and then it was with, because he didn't have a sword, he was fighting in the spirit, he cut off the head of the giant with his own sword, with Goliath's sword. So, yeah.